Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the latest FreeThought Hour. Now, I want to introduce my co-host, first of all, because I know some of you regular viewers will know her, but not everyone is in our usual audience. I think we've got some new viewers tonight. So here she is. This is Tercia. Hello, Tercia. How are you?
Hello. I'm well. I'm very well, thank you.
Good. I'm pleased to hear that. And how is it in South Africa? Is it cold?
It's cold, but we have electricity, which is good. And we are expecting some snowfall in the coming days. But just before the show started, I changed the gas bottle on my heater, so I'm warm and comfy and looking forward to tonight's show.
Good, good. Shall we introduce our honoured guest? Here he comes. This is John Hamill. Hello, John.
Hi, folks. How are things? I hope you're well.
Yep, we're all fine, thank you. Tercia, since John and I we've got some previous, we've been in communication before, so I'm going to ask you to be in a sort of moderator role today. And John, I'd like to make sure that we're a family-friendly show. We don't use strong language.
Okay.
My daughters sometimes watch this. So how the devil are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good.
Good. Now you're in Ireland. Is it Northern Ireland?
No, I'm south of the border.
Are you? Oh, right. Okay. But it's a predominantly, or it was until quite recently, a strongly Roman Catholic country, wasn't it?
The Republic of Ireland in the south is indeed, I think at the last census, it was 78% Roman Catholic, although we can debate how much of that is cultural versus adherence to catechism. But at least in terms of how people describe themselves in the census, yes, I think it's fair to say it's strongly Roman Catholic.
So I wanted to announce to everyone that in many respects, John, you and I are kindred spirits.
Okay.
We're both atheists, and we're both former directors of Atheist Alliance International. You were the secretary, and I was briefly called the affiliates director before becoming the editor of Secular World, the house journal. And eventually I became publications director, but I'll tell you more about that later. However, we didn't overlap. You'd already gone before I was co-opted on. And I myself left AAI 1.5 years ago. So for this show, I'm not acting on behalf of any organization. I'm just being me.
Okay. Although that's not quite true, John. So you didn't leave 1.5 years ago. As you said, you were co-opted onto the board in 2017. You were required to be elected before the end of 2017. Because you weren't elected, you were required to resign and leave the board. So from 1st of January 2018, you were no longer a director of Atheist Alliance International. Even though you pretended to be, you did so corruptly and dishonestly, and that was really appalling behaviour on your part.
Well, I was going to ask you, in fact, I was going to invite you to give the account of I know you've got a grievance against AAI, and I was going to invite you to go into the detail of that in a minute, but you've presumpted that. That's not a word, is it? You've preempted that. Sorry, Tercia. Oh, we can't hear you, Tercia.
Why not? Can you hear me now?
Yes,
crystal clear, Tercia. Yes.
Yep.
All right. So, John, I've been co-hosting with John Richards for a while now, and when he told me about tonight's interview, I said to him, I want to know as little as possible for the express purpose of being unbiased. So I know absolutely nothing. And I'm honestly sincere about that. So
okay.
So you're very quick. You said that. So it sounds to me as if the trouble is that you are alleging that John Richards and AAI are basically guilty of misconduct. Is that so? Because of John's position on the board, just run through with me, because I've made a note here. So the obviously I had a board, and John was on the board, and he had to be elected. Is that right?
Not quite. So there really is an appalling litany of dishonesty on John's part over these issues. So it's difficult to know where to begin. But let's start with the first dishonest statement that John has made this evening that I picked him up on. So to answer your question directly, Tercia, in the bylaws, there was a provision to co-opt a director onto the board without being elected. So the purpose of that, as you might imagine, is, if a director falls ill or can't continue with their duties for some other reason, you shouldn't have to wait until the AGM at the end of the calendar year to elect a new director. You can co-opt someone on. So John was co-opted on in that way, but the bylaws very explicitly say that anyone who's co-opted in that manner must be elected at an AGM by the members before the end of the year. And if they're not elected at an AGM by the members before the end of the year, then they must resign. And that word is in the bylaws. It says they must resign. John did not arrange an AGM. He did not seek election by the members. The sum total of AAI members who have voted for John Richards ever is precisely zero, ever. And even though he was entirely illegitimate, he continued to dishonestly present himself as a director on the board of AAI, and took a series of really appallingly anti-democratic decisions after that. But I don't think any of this is in doubt. I think the question for John is, you were supposed to arrange an AGM before the end of 2017, and if not, you were supposed to resign. Why did you not arrange an AGM, and why did you not resign?
Okay, well, is that all you want to say about your accusations to AAI?
Well, that's my initial response to the first dishonest statement that you've made. So I think that would be a good place for you to start.
Thank you. Okay. Well, let me have my say then. Okay. Recently, John, you published on Twitter an email that was sent by me to the then board of AAI, dated the 13th of December 2017. I'm going to put that on screen for our benefit. Let me see if I can find it. Pardon me. Bear with me for a minute.
So is this presentation that you've prepared, John, is this by way of answering the question that I've asked, or are you going to avoid that question? I mean, could you just answer briefly? Why did you not resign when the bylaws required you to resign?
Okay, John Hamill, when was John Richards supposed to resign?
At the end of 2017, because he had no mandate.
Okay, so he was supposed to resign at the end of December 2017. Okay, cool.
So do you mind just answering that question, John? Why did you not resign at the end of 2017?
Yes, I'm happy to, but you'll have noticed that I didn't interrupt you. I let you have your say. So are you going to let me have mine?
So let's look at the email. I'd like to see the email.
Good. Yeah, I think so too. So this email, go away, this is live. Sorry, I've got a child interrupting us here. So this email, which I don't contest or deny, this is what I wrote. And what's more important,
that's not what I sent you, John.
You're interrupting. That is exactly what you sent to the Twitter feed where I screen grabbed it from. Okay? You published it.
No, it's not. But anyway, go ahead.
So the thing is, when I left AAI 18 months ago, I ceased to have access to the confidential files of that organization, as is required by company regulations. And you left AAI even long before me in February 2017. So neither of us are part of AAI now. So we shouldn't, and I don't, have access to the confidential files. So my first question to you, John, is how have you obtained access to the AAI confidential email base database?
Okay, I'll answer that directly, John, and I hope that you'll answer my question once I answer yours. So what you put on the screen here is not what I sent you on Twitter. What I sent you on Twitter was just a few lines. Not all of the text that you've put up here. It's quite small. I can't read it. Perhaps what I sent you is a subset of this. But I received that from a whistleblower who does have access to those emails. There have been quite a few whistleblowers within AAI. One, I think, a very brave and honourable person has since gone public, who's Shirley Rivera. So she raised lots of problems within AAI through the proper channels. Only when she was treated really appallingly and refused any route to rectify the corrupt actions within that board, she then left and went public. And part of going public was to publish some of those internal emails. Shirley's not the only whistleblower. There are others. There's a whistleblower who has sent me some emails, including the email that I sent to you. The reason I sent you in that Twitter, John, is because you weren't telling the truth on Twitter. On Twitter, you were saying there was a problem with the membership system and you didn't know who the members were, and that's why you couldn't arrange an AGM. The email that you've just put on screen, if it's the same one that I sent to you on Twitter, demonstrated that just wasn't true, that you had all of the member details sorted out. It was perfectly possible for you to send an email to all of the members by the end of 2017 to arrange an AGM. And so that's why I sent you the email, to demonstrate that you weren't telling the truth when we were talking about this on Twitter. And how I got access to it was through a whistleblower who's concerned that you, among others, were repeatedly making untrue statements about AAI in public. And the whistleblower sent me that information because this person was aware that you were making untrue statements about your record at AAI. So that's where I got the email from. And now that I've answered your question directly, perhaps you'll answer mine. Why did you not resign at the end of 2017?
I'm coming to that, but thank you for explaining to me how you got hold of that information. Now, you'll notice that once again, I listened to you without interruption.
I notice you're not answering the question, John.
I'm hoping I'm going to have to mute your mic. Don't forget I can do that, John. I don't want to, but I'm hoping that you will give me the opportunity to respond without that being necessary. So, looking at the image on that email, we can see something of the state of the board that I'm not sure I've given you the right image, actually. No, it's this one.
What you've put on the screen isn't what I sent to you before, John.
No, you're right. Sorry, that's my mistake. I am sharing you the right one now. Here it comes. Is it this one? Let's have a look. That's it. Yeah, sorry. I apologize for sharing the wrong.
Familiar.
Yeah, good. For sharing the wrong document.
John, can I just ask, before you continue to share the document, John Hamill I want to know, as somebody who has no information, this is 5 years ago. Well, how is this? What is the relevance? Why should somebody like me, who has no idea, well, until fairly recently, I've never even heard of AAI. How is this relevant in any way? It's 5 years ago. It seems to me that neither you nor John Richards are still involved with AI. So, what's the relevance? Why is this so important?
Sure, that's a good question, but because it's not just about what happened 5 years ago. At that point that we were discussing, Tercia, in 2017, AAI was the only atheist group in the world that had special consultative status at the United Nations and participatory status at the Council of Europe. And lots of people put in lots of time and effort to go through onerous processes in order to acquire that status. So the part of those processes involve demonstrating adherence to democratic standards. So specifically, if you turn up at the United Nations, so for example, people have from AAI have presented to the full United Nations Human Rights Council, which is the human rights representatives of literally every country represented in the UN, all gathered together, listening to the AAI representative. And in order to be facilitated in doing that, the United Nations will only deal with international organizations. So even if you pick a very large atheist organization from any particular country, so let's say American Atheists or Freedom from Religion Foundation, someone like that, those organizations cannot get UN status because they're from one country. You have to have democratic representation from multiple countries. And what the UN want to know is that the person turning up is expressing the settled consensus view as expressed democratically by all of their members across all of those countries. So there's a pretty onerous set of hoops to jump through in order to attain that status. What John and the rest of his dishonest and corrupt colleagues did was to completely destroy the democratic legitimacy of AAI. So they changed the bylaws to remove the requirement to publish accounts. They changed the bylaws to remove AGMs. They changed the bylaws to remove the requirement of directors to be elected at all. They changed the bylaws to remove the ability of the members to pass motions that were binding on the board, essentially give themselves personal control of AAI in a situation when they were representative of absolutely nobody. So whereas previously it was the case that AAI representatives would turn up at the United Nations and make representations and presentations on behalf of dozens of atheist groups all around the world. Since then, since the corrupt and dishonest actions that John Richards and others took, we've had people turning up at the United Nations purportedly being elected and representative of AAI, who were elected by nobody, who were representative of nobody, and that remains the case today. So shortly after John Richards did this, there was a letter sent to the Secretary General of Atheist Alliance International. As it happens, the letter was absolutely absurd. I mean, it was literally the kind of thing an 8-year-old would write. But yeah, it was written by the same people who corruptly took over AAI and had no democratic mandate to do so. And they were presenting to them just very quickly, John. I'm nearly finished.
No. Listen. You missed out dishonest. I'm trying to help you here. You called us corrupt again, but you forgot to say dishonest. Don't forget that.
Okay, dishonest and corrupt, because they were doing the same thing that John Richards has been doing for some years, which John thinks is funny, apparently, which is to represent yourself as a director of Atheist Alliance International when he wasn't a director of Atheist Alliance International. He had absolutely no mandate to do that. And so I think the people who continue to do what John Richards did for several years are entirely illegitimate and corrupt, and it's worth pointing that out without letting them continue to disgrace organised atheism at the United Nations in the way that John Richards did.
Okay, so what you're saying is that...
Sorry, Tercia. We've had 21 minutes of the show, and so far I've hardly been able to speak, and I don't think that's fair. So we're going to have me now, okay? So looking at the image that I shared, I don't know if I can share it with me again. Yes, here you go. Looking at the image, we can see something of the state that the previous board had let the organization get into. I hope you can see that. If you full screen it, it'll be big enough. 552 members of the full members, these are individuals, 552 of the 698 had lapsed. Now let's look at that's the second list down, second row down. The junior members, also 22 out of the 27 of them had lapsed. And if we go to the fourth row, you'll see that the affiliates, because this is supposed to be an affiliate organization, it's an organization of organizations, okay? And you can see that 45 of the 53 affiliated organizations had also lapsed. And the remaining ones that are described there as current, or what was it, 6 current and 2 overdue, those ones also lapsed during the course of the next few months. So you can see that the organization was in a bit of a state. And I'll be asking John how he'd allowed that to happen in a minute. But that's not the whole story, because the organization was hemorrhaging money faster than it was coming in. It had an expensive and unsuitable database system by the name of Salsa, which was costing in the order of $3,600 a year. Nobody could really operate it. It's too complex. And there was a resident of India who was being paid an annual salary of $6,000, which is fortune in that country, to edit the Secular World Journal. And the bank charges were just exorbitant. And this was all due to some very unwise decisions that had been made by the previous board. AAI was actually heading for bankruptcy. But even that's not the whole story, because the website was a disgrace. It hadn't been updated in about 2 years. It didn't work on mobiles. And some of the pages took visitors to porn sites. It was simply shameful for an organization of the nature of AAI. You couldn't direct anyone to it. It would be an embarrassment and discourage them from getting involved. And there was a webmaster who was on the payroll. I'm going to ask John how he managed to let that get into the state it was. But by far the worst of all, AAI didn't file for renewal of its license to operate as a charity with the California Department of Justice or the California Franchise Tax Board for a decade, not since at least 2013, when John was secretary, at least for part of that time. So the organization was en route to being disenfranchised by the wealthy state of California, where a large number of donors reside. So this is a question that John needs to answer, how his board allowed that to happen. Now, I want to tell you something about me and how I got to be in the situation that John calls corrupt and dishonest. And it is funny because nothing was further from my intentions. So when I joined, that was in September 2017, I was co-opted. Gail Miller was president and she was doubling as treasurer. And the impression I got was that the rats had abandoned the sinking ship. The previous secretary, one John Hamill, had left in February 2017. So at that time, AAI was in a perilous state. Someone needed to take it by the horns and mend the mess that it was in before it became terminal. It needed an economical database, a new website, a reasonable priced bank account, and entirely voluntary, unpaid staff. Extreme measures were needed to rescue the organization. A lot of work was required, thanks to the horrible mess the previous board had left it in. Now, my personal experience, John loves to personalize these things, so let me tell you about my personal involvement. As I said, I was recruited, co-opted, on September the 15th, 2017. Initially, I was appointed affiliates director, but there were hardly any affiliates to direct, as you've just seen from that email that John sent me, which I've just shared on screen. This one, right? You can see the state of the affiliates right there. 6. And they left in the next few months. So the database was hopeless. We couldn't use the database, and it had to be migrated to a new provider of a more affordable price. So what could I do? I desperately tried to compile a new database from scratch using the internet search term atheist groups and a spreadsheet. Given that I didn't dare to show anyone the shameful website, that was a hopeless task. Anyway, before the new database became available to allow me to accomplish anything significant in that role, I was offered the editorship of Secular World, which was very acceptable to me because I enjoy writing. And that became the focus of my attention from March 2018 until I moved on at the end of 2020. And those magazines, Secular World Journal, can all be seen on the AAI website, and I'm proud of them. During my tenure, my role evolved into daily blogging on Patheos. I enjoy doing that too, although of course, due to changes at Patheos, they've all gone religious now, and anything atheistic has been erased. And later on still, I started making videos because that means of communication began to take over from text, and my job title became Publications Director. So those were my personal areas of responsibility. Everything else was a matter for the whole board. Policy decisions were made by the whole board. I didn't personally, on my own, make any decisions that weren't involved with Secular World, Patheos, and the YouTube channel. Sometimes I expressed a view in the board meetings, and sometimes, if I was very persuasive, my view was adopted. Other times it wasn't. And this is what's known as collective responsibility. But I'm afraid John likes to attack a person. He likes to personalize things and be insulting. If you look at his Twitter thread, you see that people who piled onto his Twitter thread said, John Richards is a piece of shit and John Richards has no balls. But we don't have to dwell on the past. Things have improved. And I'm going to show you what AAI is currently doing. If I can find that, let me see if I can find that upload. Yes, okay. So bear with me. I'm going to play a short video because, as you said, Tercia, that was 5 years ago. It's history. But let me show you this. Take a look at this. And John, this is playing for over 5 minutes. So I'm going to give you a similar amount of time to respond. Okay, here we go.
Fatma Smida, a young Tunisian woman, was under threat for her activism for women's rights. AAI moved her to a different city. Mahdi Salali was at risk of severe punishment for criticizing the Saudi regime and the religion of Islam. AAI resettled him in Europe. Nasrullah taught law at several universities in Afghanistan and presented his views on secularism on TV. When the Taliban came to power, he had no option but to flee. AAI resettled him in a relatively safe country and he continues his advocacy and academic work. Hani was tortured and threatened in Somali because of her outspoken criticism of Islamic tradition, and was at risk of forced marriage. With AAI's support, she is now residing in a safe country. Miss Izzat is an Egyptian LGBTQ woman, artist, and activist. She used her out for activism and was very active with several atheist groups, such as the Atheist Republic. She suffered from all kinds of torture when some people found out about her activism. She was often beaten severely, blackmailed, raped, and threatened with death. AAI supported her with funds to continue her outwork and she was later resettled in a safe country in Europe. Omar Farooq was 15 when charged with blasphemy and sentenced to a 10 years jail term with menial labor. Because of AAI's intervention last year his sentence was quashed. He was released from prison and safe accommodation was found for him and family members. Yahya Sharif Aminu, a 22-year-old singer in Nigeria, was charged with blasphemy and sentenced to death. AAI's legal team was able to quash the death sentence. However, the court remitted him back to the Sharia court for a retrial. AAI's lawyers immediately appealed that decision. He is currently in jail and the legal battle to get him released continues. Mubarak Bala, the president of the Humanist Association of Nigeria, was arrested on the 28th of April, 2020, for making a critical Facebook post about Prophet Muhammad. Because of the pressure from Islamic zealots, he was denied basic human rights such as the right to counsel and fair treatment in accordance with the law. AAI organized and participated in several campaigns to build public awareness of his case and apply pressure on the Nigerian government and Kano state government. Mubarak was recently sentenced to an unjust jail term of 24 years. Along with other human rights groups, AAI is fighting for his safe release. AAI has provided financial support for his wife and baby son every month since the 20th of May 20. Joy Dev was in jail for over 20 months without a trial and is now facing a prison sentence. AAI lawyers are working for him in court. Mabubul Alam and Sagar Borua were in jail for nearly a year for criticizing religion and are now facing a trial. AAI lawyers are supporting them. Liman Fakir was threatened by the radical Islamist Party Islami movement, Bangladesh. Instead of helping him, the police collaborated with the Islamists and filed a lawsuit against him. He was later arrested and brutally tortured in police custody. He was in jail for over 20 months without a trial. He was eventually granted bail but the trial continues. He is facing a prison sentence of up to 14 years. AAI appointed lawyers to fight for him in court, and are actively seeking resettlement for him in a safe country. Asad Noor is the most prominent Bangladeshi secular activist of the time. Each of his videos generates 1k-5k shares on social media. Asad was booked for blasphemy and was in prison twice without a trial. To save his life, Asad fled to neighboring India where he resides currently. He lives without basic human rights such as health care or freedom of movement. During the pandemic, AAI lawyers filed a petition in the District Court of Kolkata, West Bengal Province of India, so he could get vaccinated. The petition was successful. AAI lawyers are now preparing for a petition to ensure basic human rights for him in the High Court of India. Ahmed Al-Khair is an atheist activist from Gao, Mali, who operates a Facebook page known as Atheism. Mali is a stronghold of Islamic terrorist outfits such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Criticizing Islam there can mean death. Ahmed's activism made him a prime target of the Islamic extremist outfits. He had to flee. He entered the neighboring Free Republic of Niger in search of safety. Instead of safety, the Niger officials arrested him without any evidence of wrongdoing. He is in jail in inhumane conditions. AAI lawyers are battling for his release. Islam is an Egyptian LGBTQ man and activist. He was arrested and tortured because of his lifestyle and his views. With AAI's help, he found safety in Europe. Arash Jabodist is an Iranian activist and an AAI member. He was granted asylum in Canada. Nurullah Koyucu is a Turkish national. Several lawsuits were filed against him because of his criticism of Islam and the Turkish regime. He had to flee. With AAI's support, he now has found safety in Europe. Kazis Humanist School was founded in 2011 by the Kazis United Humanist Association. It is located in the western region of Uganda. The school is founded on humanist principles and science. It is open to boys and girls from ages 3 to 14. Money raised by AAI helped the school buy textbooks and school materials, renovate school buildings, and pay teacher salaries. Eagles View Humanist School is located in Bugwenchkeira, Uganda. The school proudly identifies itself as secular and embraces humanist values. Due to heavy rain and strong winds, the school building and teaching materials were severely damaged in 2021. It needed major repairs. Atheist Alliance International funded the repair work, which included the installation of a new roof and plastering the walls to increase the structural integrity. Atheist Alliance International also connected the school with other humanist donors. Kasitu Humanist Association is based in Kasitu, Uganda. AAI partnered with Kasitu Humanist Association to build an internet cafe in this rural sub-county of Uganda. The cafe has been able to give hundreds of young Ugandans and residents of Kasitu access to the internet, as well as providing a useful income for Kasitu Humanist Association and a forum for promoting humanism and rationalist ideas. In coordination with affiliates Atheist and Agnostic Alliance of Pakistan and the Atheist Union of Greece, AAI facilitated a legal petition in favor of a Pakistani citizen seeking asylum on the ground that if he returned to his home country, he would be in danger of being arrested and being sentenced to death because of his atheistic views. The First Instance Administrative Court of Thessaloniki issued an irrevocable decision, recognizing atheism as a vulnerability sufficient to allow asylum for refugees. This is the first final judgment of the Greek judiciary, and likely the first in the world, that recognizes atheism as a ground for the vulnerability of a citizen of a fundamentalist religious state. At the UN this year, AAI submitted a paper arguing that the international community has made great strides over the past 60 years in articulating and protecting universal human rights, including the individual's right to hold religious beliefs and to practice religion privately and publicly.
So, what have you done for atheism in the past year, John? I'll allow you the same amount of time I've just allowed AAI. Go.
Okay, so I'll answer your questions directly, John, even though you're still refusing to answer mine. So there's quite a lot you put on the table there. I was trying to note down quickly. I think you want to know about the invoicing and the affiliate members that you described as lapsed. You wanted to know about the SALSA membership system, the website, the money being paid for Secular World, the filings in the state of California. I think that's everything that I noted. If there's anything else you want me to answer, I can answer those as well. But let me just flip through those very, very quickly. It won't take long.
That'll do for going on with.
Okay, so firstly, John, I didn't ask to come on your podcast. You asked me to come on the podcast, and to bring me on the podcast, take me off the screen, mute my mic, and subject me to a big long speech that you have prepared is really quite rude. But that said, I'll try and get through all of the questions that you asked in your speech. So firstly, you asked about, you said there were only 6 affiliate members, and there were, I think you mentioned 32 that you described as lapsed. So that's not true. The payments may have been overdue, but that doesn't mean membership has lapsed. There's a very well-defined process through which membership lapses in the bylaws, and it is not because subscriptions are overdue. The reason for that is lots of different members in different countries pay different subscription rates. So, for example, Freedom from Religion Foundation does not pay the same annual subscription rate as atheist groups, let's say in Pakistan or Afghanistan. So the process is that the affiliate director is required to set a fee for the membership with the board, then to invoice that towards the members, and only when the members don't pay for 60 days, then the board can take a vote to revoke their membership. Now, the reason why all the members that you put up were described as lapsed is because the affiliate director, one John Richards, did not set their membership fees and did not issue any invoices. Now, in the private chat, I have sent to Tercia emails from some of the members at the end of 2017 when the members were asking the board, please send me an invoice so that I can renew my membership. And the board did not send out any invoices to renew the membership. So for you to put up the list of members and throw your hands in the air and say, oh my goodness, they're all lapsed, what a terrible problem has befallen us. That is not a terrible problem that is befalling AAI. That is just a statement that you're not doing your job, John.
Well, I explained, didn't I, that it wasn't possible to do the job because the database was being migrated to a new provider.
Okay, I'm muted again. So can I just answer the things that I was asked to answer first? Secondly, hang on, Tercia, John has just shouted at me there for about 10 minutes. So if you...
I was shut up. The point I'm trying to make as somebody who has served on boards, who's running my own nonprofit, is that to me, firstly, this happened 5 years ago, and secondly, for any what's happening right now, if I can hark back to Monty Python, John says this was the state, you say no, this was not the state. So the state of affairs. So it's you say no, I say yes, and it's just going back and forth. Yes, no, you did, you didn't, you did.
No. So with apologies, Tercia. Sorry, Tercia. Just with apologies, that's just not true. As a point of fact, the bylaws are the bylaws. The bylaws say what they say. There's no dispute about how you become a lapsed member in the bylaws. It's very clear in black and white. I described accurately what the bylaws say. John did not. So it's not a matter of he said, she said. It's John's being dishonest and I'm being honest. And you can look up the bylaws if you like.
Like me can judge that is to actually look at the bylaws, which I can't do right now.
I'm not being dishonest. I explained why it wasn't possible to send any communications to the affiliates. It's because the database was unusable and we had to migrate it to a new, cheaper and usable system. So it wasn't, there was several months when we couldn't communicate with the affiliates, but up until February in that year, that had been the job of the previous board, and they had allowed all those lapses to take place.
So, John, why did you resign in February of 2021? Or 2017, sorry. If I'm right, you, John Hamill, resigned from the board in February 2017.
Yes, I think I served on the board for 2 years or 3 years before I moved on, and I'll answer that directly. Tercia, if you don't mind, I'll just answer the other questions first, but I won't forget yours, even though John still hasn't answered mine. And I'd just like to say, since you told me, John, that you would give me the same amount of time to respond to your big speech, 3 times you have muted my mic since then, which is just extremely rude.
But hang on, I'm going to mute you again, because I love the way you accuse me of all sorts of things: corrupt, dishonest, rude. You're never rude, are you, John? Just listen to this. Over the past, people on your Twitter called me a piece of shit, said I had no balls, and you personally have called me corrupt, not including tonight, 11 times, delusional 5 times, 8 years old, and slopey shouldered. I love that insult. Is it an Irish one? Isn't this just childish playground behavior? And do you know what, Tercia? You know Dr. David Orenstein, don't you? The academic anthropologist at one of the New York universities. Do you know what he called him? What John Hamill called him? I'm not going to swear. He called him a cuffing idiot. And I'm the rude one.
Okay.
Do you want to know the answers to all those questions from your speech, John? Because I'll tell you them if you want. That was 4 times, by the way, you've muted me since promising to give me time to answer those questions. Okay, so, sorry?
Could you answer my question first before you answer those
no.
other things?
If you don't mind, I'm answering them in order that they were given. Tercia, I notice you didn't interrupt John and demand that he should answer my question, which he still hasn't done. But even though John hasn't answered mine, I'm going to answer all of his. So you said people can't work with salsa, John, because it was too complex. That's not true. The board every year before you joined worked with salsa perfectly well. The email that I sent Tercia in the private chat includes an email broadcast from Salsa in 2017 with the Salsa logo on it. So everyone before you could use Salsa perfectly well, although it was an expensive system and the website did need some work. And I've sent Tercia the minutes of the 2017 board meeting in January 2017. So the board meeting in January 2017 already refers to rebuilding the website and replacing Salsa as a work in progress. That's like rebuilding the website and replacing the membership system is just a business as usual task. None of that means you have to cancel the AGMs. None of that means you have to stop financial reporting. None of that means you have to continue on pretending to be a director without election. So the fact that the Salsa system was too complicated for you, the fact that the Salsa system was expensive, the fact that the website needed redeveloped, none of that suggests any of the anti-democratic measures that you took, John. Coming on to the filing in California, you're right that for a decade those filings weren't made. They weren't made because they weren't required to be made. So the law in California was changed in 2016. And in 2016, they introduced a new law that says non-profits, if they have to file their accounts every year, and if they miss 3 years in a row, they will be automatically revoked. So the first year after the change in the law in California was 2017. So by the end of 2017, when you joined, AAI was required to file accounts with California. They didn't. So the status of AAI has been revoked because the board that you were part of changed the bylaws so that you removed the need for financial reporting. You removed the need for financial reporting. And in 2018, John, the bylaws were changed so that the specific provision that required financial accounts to be provided to the members at the end of every year, that was removed. Every year before you got involved, financial accounts were presented to the members at the end of the year. After you got involved, that stopped. There's now a black hole in the accounts where nobody knows what the money was spent on from 2017 onwards when you took over, not when I was there. And for you to blame the previous board for all of this is absolutely appalling, because I have sent you letters from the previous president, from Carlos Diaz in Argentina, who was the previous president. I sent you that letter on Twitter. I can send it to you again. I'll send it to Tercia right now. The previous president from Argentina is also absolutely appalled that you are blaming the previous board for your personal feelings. So those are answers to all of the ridiculous questions that you just asked me in the big speech that you prepared. And now that I've answered all of your questions directly, John, can I ask, please, would you answer mine? Why did you not resign at the end of 2017 as you were required to do? Why did you continue to dishonestly and corruptly present yourself as a director of AAI when you were no such thing in 2018?
Well, I answered that already. I explained that exceptional measures were required to rescue the organization from the appalling mess we found it in.
There was no appalling mess. I've sent Tercia in the private chat the minutes of the board meeting from before you joined.
It was hemorrhaging, John. It was hemorrhaging. It was about to become bankrupt, John.
It wasn't. I've sent Tercia all of that detail. When I left in the middle of 2017, there were $50,000 in the account. I've sent Tercia the minutes from the board meeting around then. I've sent Tercia a letter from the previous president. You have provided no documentation at all to support your assertions. Your assertion that the thing was hemorrhaging and about to go bankrupt, you've provided no evidence for that at all. And even if that were true, John, even if that were true, in 2018, it was up to the members to fix it. It wasn't up to you to fix it. You had no mandate to do anything. The number of members who cast a vote for you, John, was 0. If the members of AAI thought the organization was collapsing and they wanted to fix it, it was up to them to do that. You had no mandate to do anything. When you were pretending to come in and, as you call it, save AAI from this fake crisis that you've invented, when you were pretending to be a director on the board, you were no such thing. You're a charlatan. You're a fraud. You're a liar. You're a corrupt and dishonest man. You have no reason why you pretended to be a director on the board of 2018. You were entirely illegitimate, and you've provided no reason today for why you didn't do that. Even if your fake crisis was true, the onus on addressing the crisis was an onus for the members of AAI. It was not your position to do anything at all for AAI. You had no mandate to do anything. You are a usurper. You're an interloper. You're a fraud and a charlatan.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I come back at that? John, you may have left 15K in the financial account.
50.
And it was in February that you left in 2017, not whatever date you suggested. However, as I pointed out,
I did the handover that summer to your friend, your very good friend of many years, Bill Flavelle. So I was involved in that summer doing handing over the secretary role to Bill Flavelle, who, by the way, described me as the greatest secretary AAI has ever had. I don't take that as a compliment coming from Bill Flavelle, but again, this idea that there was some crisis is something that has been invented by you on a post hoc basis.
I was in the middle of answering that, but you've interrupted me, and I know nothing about the handover. As I said, I wasn't co-opted until September, so that had all happened, and I didn't know about any meetings between you and Bill. But I do know that if there was 15K in the account, then 3,600 of it was due out to Salsa that year.
I said 50, 50, John, 50.
What?
50, 50, not 15.
Oh, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know the amount of money that there was in the account.
But hang on, John. If you didn't know the amount of money that was in the account,
hang on, I'm going to mute you. You're interrupting me again. Let me have a say. Whatever the amount of money that was in the account, it was going out at a rate of greater than 10,000 a year, and nothing was coming in. It was on the route to bankruptcy.
So I can answer that, John. If the organization has $50,000 in the bank and 10,000 was going out each year, that doesn't mean it's on the verge of bankruptcy, so that you have to personally take over the organization and take extreme measures. Secondly, you've told me just 5 minutes ago 2 mutually contradictory things. You've said you didn't know how much money is in the account, and you also said that the organization was about to go bankrupt. How can you know that the organization is about to go bankrupt if you don't know how much money is in the account? You're just making it up as you go. You're a spoofer and a charlatan and a fraud. And again, none of this implies that you had any role in taking over the organization. Even if the organization required, let's say, to replace Salsa because it was too expensive, the previous board had already begun that process. I've sent Tercia the minutes of the 2017 board meeting in January when that project to replace Salsa is discussed. So even if the membership system was too expensive and the website needed replaced, those are the problems that the members who provided those funds were responsible for fixing. Those funds were put there by atheist volunteers who worked to build that organization up over more than a decade. Even if they had some problems that they needed to address, they were their problems to address. They were not your problems. You had no mandate to do anything at all about those issues. You were not a director of the board. You had got no votes from anyone. The bylaws explicitly said that you were required to resign. And instead of following the bylaws and resigning, you pretended to be a director and took upon yourself to represent AAI and take over that role from the members. You did that with no mandate whatsoever. It was an extremely dishonest and corrupt thing to do, and you should be thoroughly ashamed of yourself.
Did the members know? So, can I for a moment just, I don't understand this. So, if I'm going to assume for a moment, for argument's sake, that John did take over, that John usurped the organization. But why did the members not act on that? Surely they must have known that. So John Hamill, you're very adamant that John usurped the organization, presumably for his own benefit, because why else would he do that? I mean, why else would he do that? Because you're implying that in some of the things you're saying. What I want to know is, why did the members allow that? If the members were so active, and if the affiliates were so active, and if they had the power to change the organization like you say that they did, why did they allow John then to take over the organization? And I'm not saying that John did. I'm granting that for the sake of trying to follow your argument. So my first question would be, why didn't the members put their foot down and say, no, we will not accept this?
Okay, so in 2018, AAI did not have a board because the failed 2017 board that John was a part of didn't have an AGM. They didn't have any elections. There was no one with any mandate from the members to act as a board. And so several of the members...
Listen. No, John, this is...
I'm answering your question directly. This is what the members did in that context. I'm just about to answer your question directly, Tercia.
But your answer... Sorry, I'm sorry. I don't want to be rude, but you resigned in February. John was co-opted. By whom was John co-opted? You're saying that there was no board. So who... Oh,
you're mixing up the years. Okay. So 2017... Yeah, I'll give you the timeline very quickly, Tercia. I'll give you the timeline very quickly, and it'll explain. So I had been on the board for some years. I left the board in January or February of 2017. Yes. John and Bill Flavelle and Howard Berman were co-opted onto the board throughout the year of 2017, and they failed to hold an AGM.
Okay, so, hang on. No,
yeah.
This is
okay.
So who co-opted John and Bill?
I think I know what you want, Tercia. I think I know what you want, Tercia, and I can answer that.
Okay.
It was Gail Miller was pretty much the only surviving member of the board. I don't know the details of this because I wasn't there, but Gail Miller was acting as the president at that time and doubling as the treasurer. And she is the one who had the information. And I was appointed to do specific jobs which weren't in that field.
So Gail Miller co-opted John Richards, Howard Berman, and Bill Flavelle during 2017. Those people failed to hold an AGM as they were required to do during 2017. And then in 2018, there was no board. And to answer your question directly, Tercia, the members did act. So there were a number of members, including the Freedom from Religion Foundation. You're possibly aware of Dan Barker and Annie Laurie Gailey. So they were members of AAI, and they got together with Michael Nugent from Atheist Ireland and started working on a plan to reorganize the organization and to essentially reboot it because there was no board. The people who were still in control of the bank account, the PayPal account, the file systems, the email system, that was John Richards, Bill Flavelle, Howard Berman, Gail Miller. So I was involved in that process of trying to put those democratic structures in place with Annie Laurie Gaylor, Dan Barker, and Michael Nugent. And what the existing kind of shadow board did was they instructed Michael Nugent and FFRF to go off and work on these democratic structures. And then they held an entirely bogus and illegitimate AGM in secret. They used that secret AGM to which only one member attended. They used that secret AGM that was attended by only one member, which was Andrew Rawlings from Australia. John Richards attended that meeting in May of 2018. And in that meeting in May of 2018, they made the following changes to the bylaws. They removed the requirement to report financial accounts. So after that meeting in 2018, there's a big black hole in the accounts when nobody knows what the money was spent on. They removed the requirement for directors to be elected by the members. They gave themselves the power to appoint directors. They removed the requirement to hold AGMs. There were no AGMs for several years after that. They removed the ability of the members to pass motions. And all of this, if you want to know the details in black and white, Tercia, it's available in a document that I wrote. It's available on the AAI Wikipedia page. You can compare and contrast the bylaws, the original bylaws that I've just sent you tonight, with the bylaws that John introduced in May 2018. Those anti-democratic bylaws are still on the way back machine. You can compare and contrast. You're laughing, John, but you attended that meeting, and that's what that meeting did.
And that meeting had collective responsibility. It wasn't just me. I know you.
I didn't say it was just you. I didn't say it was just. Yes, but it was you. It wasn't just you, but it was you. So
it was the board. The board.
No, it wasn't. There was no board. You weren't a member of the board. You hadn't been elected. The number of votes that you have ever received from anyone at AAI, John, is 0. You have never been elected to any position at AAI. You're a charlatan and a fraud.
What about
You've got dishonest? Don't forget dishonest. Put that in
dishonest
there.
charlatan and fraud.
Thank you.
What
All my
about
dessert.
Gail Miller and other people? Were they also not elected?
Correct. So Gail Miller was elected. She was elected actually at the same time as me. She was on the board when I was there. At the end of 2017, Gail's mandate had expired. So she should have been elected at the end of 2017 at an AGM, but she wasn't. So she did earn a mandate, and then it had been expired. But John Richards, Bill Flavelle, and Howard Berman were never elected ever. Okay. They were only ever co-opted.
John Hamill, what is the requirement? I don't have time to go through all the documents you sent me now. What was the requirement? How many board members was the legal requirement when you resigned? When you resigned in February of 2017, what was the requirement of how many board members did they have to be?
There had to be between 4 and 13. I believe when I resigned, there were 12, and I resigned, and that went down to 11.
Okay, and then what happened between February 2017 to John was co-opted in September 2017. So I don't know when the others were co-opted or whatever. What happened from February 2017 to September 2017? What happened? So John Richards joined in September 2017. There were 11 board members in February 2017. What happened to the other 10 besides Gail Miller, whom I'm presuming remained between February and September of 2017? Do you know? Because that seems to me as if that is crucial information.
Firstly, I accept entirely what you say, Tercia, that I've sent you quite a lot of documents there, and it's not reasonable to expect that you should read them all. Against that...
maybe tomorrow, but now.
Sure. Well, the audience should note that I'm the one sending all the documents, and John is just making assertions. John has no
But-
documents whatsoever.
I don't think.
So,
I know what happened to the 11 board
yeah.
members
So
between February 2017 and September 2017.
yes. So, well, I don't want to put words in anyone else's mouth. The other people who were there at the time and resigned, well, they can describe their own motives. I'm happy to give the context for why I resigned, since you asked me earlier. I've nothing to hide. But I mean, it's not relevant to this, but I can describe the
I think
details if you
quite
like.
relevant. And,
Okay.
and but what concerns me as an outsider, and remember, yes, I'm friends with John and I'm his co-host. So if I'm biased, I probably am biased towards John. Let's acknowledge that straight out, because I've gotten to know him. I don't know you from a bar of soap. But as somebody trying to be objective and thinking logically, you are making serious allegations
Yes,
against
very serious.
an organization and a person. Well, actually not one person, because I can't, if John had so much power in an international organization, well, then I'm very happy to be your friend, John. Maybe you can help me a little bit more too. because really, that to me, that is it's nice to know that I know such important people with so much influence, because there must have been 10 board members. Now, listen, I'm just thinking purely logically. If there were 10 board members, or 11 when you resigned, and in a period of 6 to 7 months, I'm presuming there was one left. Gail Miller is the one name that I have. So either she was the only one who was left, or the other 9 or 10 who were there, if they were happy to co-opt John and Bill and the other people. And then
yeah.
but if there was only 1 or 2 people left, then that, to me, looking from the outside, it seems as if people are resigning from the board of an organization. Then the only conclusion I can make is that either they've all gotten really busy with something else within the same period, or there's something that's making people resign. What was it?
So
No?
it's the latter, Tercia. There was something that was making people resign, and I'll explain what it is now. But very quickly before I do that, I just need to agree with what you said about John being co-opted. There was nothing at all wrong with John Richards being co-opted. I think I said earlier that's a legitimate part of the bylaws. What was illegitimate was when John failed to hold the AGM and at the end of 2017 to get a mandate, and then pretended to be a director when he wasn't.
Okay.
So the reason why the people were resigning had to do with some serious allegations that I received as secretary about someone involved with AAI. The allegations related to a murder, and the person who was the subject of the allegations was later found to be innocent. So I'm going to call them Person X for now, because I don't want to repeat their name in association with these allegations. But what we received was photographs of newspaper front pages that described stories in 2 different countries. And the stories related to a dead girl. There was pictures of a person being arrested in connection with the death. There was a name associated with that picture of the person being arrested. The name was quite similar but different to someone who was involved with AI. The allegation was this person has changed their name and moved to a new country, which was Canada, left dead bodies behind them in other countries, and that this person was a danger to those around them, in particular a danger to women. So when I received those allegations, the photographs of the person in the newspaper looked very much to me like the person that I knew who was associated with AAI, Person X. So I knew their address in Canada. I immediately looked up the nearest RCMP station. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Well, thank you for substantiating what I said. There had been an exodus.
No, there was no exodus. No, I haven't said. I didn't say there was an exodus, John. Let me just finish what happened. I got those reports Thursday. I looked up the address of the nearest RCMP premises to that person's address, and I sent them on to the police in Canada. I said, I don't know if this is true. I've just received this. The allegation is there's a person down the street from you who's a danger to women, and they're on the run from police in another country. And the RCMP thanked me for that. Some months later, they said that they've looked up the details, and that person was not convicted of any crime and is not wanted in connection with any crime and is in Canada entirely lawfully. And I was delighted to hear that news. At the first board meeting after I did that, obviously, as soon as I informed the police, I informed the rest of the AAI board, and then at the first board meeting after I did that, I was criticised by some people on the AAI board for contacting the police. I believe the term was without authorisation. The suggestion was that I had to seek authorisation from the rest of the AAI board before contacting the police. And here in Ireland, we've had lots of scandals, Thursday, about the church when we demanded that the bishops should contact the authorities rather than deal with problems internally. So I didn't think it was appropriate to criticise anyone on the board for reporting to the authorities immediately. And I resigned because of that. So there were some back and forward about this person. Were they going to leave the board? Were they going to stay on? Some people wanted to be the new president, and some wanted to have different roles. Different people left for different reasons.
Okay.
So the number of directors did drop, but there wasn't an exodus in the sense that there was a crisis.
I'll accept numbers drop. If you don't like the word exodus,
sure.
I'll accept numbers drop.
The numbers of directors on the board dropped, which is absolutely no excuse at all for someone pretending to be a director when they're not. That's absolutely no excuse for someone avoiding the requirement to get a democratic mandate. That's absolutely no excuse for John's continued dishonesty and his failure to explain himself.
I don't understand why you continue to single out one person when they were
because he's the only one here. I've made similar. Tertia,
you can't say the board, John. Is that the problem?
That's what you should say.
So I've spoken about these issues on my podcast with Howard Berman, with Bill Flavelle. I've spoken about lots of the other directors. Of all the people involved in this corrupt behaviour, the one I've spoken to and about the least is John Richards. And the idea that John should try to dilute his responsibility on the basis that there were other people on the board too. I mean, this is like saying, in the playground, when the kid does something wrong, they often say, a bigger boy made me do it, sir. And this is the kind of nonsense we're getting from John Richards today.
I've got to respond to that. Sorry, Tersia. I mean, now he's calling me a bully or playground bully or something. Listen, it's not a case of diluting my responsibility. It's a case of the board, of however many people it was, having the responsibility and me just having a small fraction of it. That's not a dilution. That's a consensus of responsibility.
Yes, I have to agree with that. John,
So I agree with that too. There was about 5 people on the board. Sorry, Tercia, I mean, people keep muting me and then talking over me. I mean, John promised I would allow to respond.
You
So
never stop. Once you start, you never stop. And it's like gish galloping. You just provide error after error after error after error, and we can't address them.
So there were 5 people on the board, Tercia, you're right, and John was just one of the 5. So he was among the 5 people responsible for the corrupt and dishonest behaviour. If you think that means he's only 1/5 corrupt, I think that means he's one of 5 people who behaved in a corrupt and dishonest way. And the idea that John should excuse that by saying there were other people on the board who did it too, it doesn't matter. I mean, you're not 8 years old, John. You put your big boy.
That's not what I'm saying.
John,
I'm not trying to make any excuses here. What I'm saying is the board was severely depleted. The rats had left the ship, if you don't like the word exodus. The organization was in a dire condition, and emergency activities need to be undertaken.
It was not in a dire condition. No emergency activities were required. And John, you should put your big boy pants on, son, and own up to what you did and stop blaming others.
Acceptable. Let me get my teacher voice on here. You really have been very personal in your attacks. And when John says that he was part of the board, he is not trying to not take responsibility for his action. I never got that impression. And the one thing that I want to get to is, so what must John Richards and the board now do? Firstly, what was the damage that they did besides being undemocratic? So what damage was done? Who was harmed? And what was the negative impact of the actions they take? So can you answer me those 3 questions? I'm accepting, yes, it was undemocratic, but who was harmed? What was the long-term harm of the actions that the illegitimate board took? And what must they do to rectify the harm that they did? Can you answer me those 3 questions?
Yes, so the people who were harmed were the 36 affiliate members who were disenfranchised by John Richards and 4 other people. So that included Freedom from Religion Foundation, that included Atheist Ireland, and dozens of other groups who were...
how were they harmed? They were disenfranchised. They couldn't vote. They couldn't say what they wanted.
So they were the 36 organizations that built AAI. I mean, the AAI was an alliance of those 36 organizations. Tercia, I'm coming to that, please.
Okay.
The 36 organizations built AAI. The name is the clue is in the title. It's an alliance. AAI was an alliance of those 36 organizations. What John and his 4 friends did was they took a democratic alliance that was controlled democratically by those 36 organizations, and they took over full personal control themselves. They took over control of the bank account, the brand, the website, the email system, everything. So those organizations were improperly excluded from the 2018 AGM, the bogus AGM that John attended. He didn't allow FFRF to attend. He didn't allow Atheist Ireland to attend. Him and his 4 friends didn't allow FFRF to attend. Him and his 4 friends didn't allow Atheist Ireland to attend. Yes, Tercia, they have accepted that all of those organizations were improperly excluded from their bogus AGM. They have already accepted that.
No, those organizations, in other words, just sat back and said, oh, it's all right. We're not allowed. How did they not allow them? Did they say, you shall not come here?
Yeah, so I'll answer that directly. Here's what happened. All of those organizations complained vociferously. They said this is entirely illegitimate. And you can read the responses of John Richards and his 4 friends, which was to say, oh yeah, we misunderstood the bylaws. Sorry about that. And carried on regardless. That's what they
well,
said. We misunderstood the bylaws. Sorry about that. And
What
I
what
have,
steps?
I have no knowledge of that exchange that John has just described. And what he's done there is he's gone right back to the beginning of the organization when it separated from Atheists of America. I think this might have been around 2009 when he quotes his 36 original members. Bear in mind, that's a historic number. And what we had at this time was 6 current affiliates listed. 6. That's all.
Okay, John.
John just doesn't
what-
understand what a member is and how you cease to be a member.
I still want to, you haven't explained to me what the so they were, once again, I'm saying this for the sake of argument. So they were disenfranchised, they were barred from attending the AGM. Okay, so did they suffer financial losses because of it?
Yes.
Was any so the affiliate organization suffered financial losses?
Yes.
Okay, how did that happen?
Well, I mentioned when I left, there was $50,000 in the bank account. All of the money in the bank account was accumulated through donations, whereby AAI would go out to conferences and speak to donors, and the members would pay subscriptions. That's how the money was accumulated over the years. The board then was required to report to the members at the end of every year and provide a financial statement to the members. That happened every single year until John Richards and his 4 friends took over. John Richards and his 4 friends were responsible for the first year in which there was no financial report to the members, which was the end of 2017. And then in 2018, John Richards and his 4 friends changed the bylaws so that there was no financial reporting anymore. And there's still to this day, there's a big black hole in the accounts. That's why the status of AAI has been revoked in the state of California, because no one knows what the money is being spent on. And to answer your other question, where John muted me before, it has been published now on the AAI website, and they have sent a letter to all of their members admitting that they illegitimately excluded all of these members from their 2018 AGM that John Richards attended, and admitting that and just saying, sorry, apologies, it was a mistake.
So now what more do you want them to do?
The first thing I want John Richards to do is stop lying by blaming the previous board. The people who came before John Richards built the organization up, acquired status at the nations, built up their financial reserves, the organization status in the Council of Europe, got charitable status in the state of California. That charitable status in California is being revoked because of the big hole in the accounts. And that's the fault of John Richards and his 4 friends.
Okay, so
he keeps blaming the people who came before him, which is dishonest and contemptible.
Okay, the big hole that you're talking about, how many years is there no financial? So
I believe 4 years.
Okay, but
Untrue.
So there's a
In
difference between not
in fact,
reporting financial records and not having financial records. So are you saying that there's a period of 4 years? But now let's just note that John resigned in 2018. John,
no, 2020.
2020. Okay.
I decided to resign in 2020 in December, and actually terminated my connection in January 21. So 18 months ago.
Okay, so the allegation that you are making is that there are no financial records, or there was no reporting of the financial records, because there's a difference.
Yes, there is a difference, Tercia. So there has been no reporting of how the money was spent. Whether or not there have been any records kept, I don't know. Perhaps John can tell us.
Your whistleblower could tell you.
Well, we don't need a whistleblower. John Richards is here right now. John, what was the money spent on in 2018 and 2019?
Okay, well, this wasn't my specific responsibility because, as I explained, I was the publications director and my attention was towards producing a quarterly journal, daily blogging on Patheos, and making YouTube videos to grow the YouTube channel. So I'm really the wrong person to answer that question. However, I can tell you that a sum of money, I don't know how much it was spent on a completely new website, which was desperately needed because we really didn't want people being directed to porn sites. I don't think that was the right mood for this sort of organization that we're talking about. And some money was spent also on a new database, UMP, and it wasn't because Salsa was unusable. It was just unnecessarily complex, and that's why it was expensive. We could have used it, but we felt that it was a waste of money. And given that there were hardly any members of the previous board to discuss this with, emergency action had to be taken. So we bought.
Why didn't you tell the members at the end of 2017 what you'd spent their money on? I mean, at that time, John, I was a member of Atheist Ireland. I was an officer of Atheist Ireland. Atheist Ireland was one of the members who had built up AAI. I personally am the person on the board of AAI who got the participatory status at the Council of Europe.
Well done.
All of those people put in Trojan effort over many years to build up those financial reserves. You did not report to the members how you spent their money at the end of 2017, and still to this day you have not reported to the members how your board spent their money in 2017. And the idea that financial reporting should take the form of you coming on a podcast and waving your arms and thinking up some spend categories is utterly absurd. You need to publish the audited accounts for 2017 that you have failed to publish because you're a dishonest and corrupt person.
Well, thank you for that. Once again, you do love your insults, don't you? Now, let me explain it to you.
Well, I'm backing them up, John. I'm explaining why you're corrupt, and I'm providing the documents to Tercia. I mean, it's not just adjectives; it's description of your behaviour.
Have you buried this bone yet? No, unfortunately
not. But you still haven't explained why you didn't tell the members how you spent their money in 2017.
Listen, anybody can go to the new website now and find out exactly.
No, they can't. It's not on the website. It's not on the website. Oh, God, there's a big black hole on the website. No one knows what you spent the money on in 2017, John, because you were obliged to report the financial details to the members. That was an obligation of yours in the bylaws, and you didn't do it. And all you've done since is complain because people call you corrupt. You're a corrupt and dishonest man. And if you don't like that description, the answer to that is to publish the accounts. The answer is not to come on here and whine because someone's calling you a name. Put your big boy pants on, son. Go and get the accounts and publish them.
And I'm not allowed to say that that's condescending or patronizing, of course, am I?
Get the accounts. Stop complaining about how the adjectives that are being used.
I'm on the website.
The response to that is to publish the accounts, John.
I'm on the website looking for
them. They're not on the website.
Both Johns. I have a pertinent question to ask.
I'm listening, Tercia.
Boards is that they are different portfolios. And John Richards, were you the chairperson of the board?
No, never.
Because
sorry, Tercia, there's no such thing as portfolios. That's just wrong.
Okay, well then that's just silly because
no, it's not. That's basic corporate. That is basic corporate governance. The difference between a member of an organization and a director is a director has legal obligations. Among the legal obligations are a duty to inquire. The idea that you would be a director and say, well, I didn't know about that thing about the financials because somebody else knows about it. The point of being a director is you have a duty to know about it. If you're on the board and you don't know about it, you have no business on that board.
Yes, but no. The way unless, all right, then Atheist Alliance board is completely different to any other board that I've ever served on.
Yeah,
because people specific. Yes, the board. Firstly, the way I understand boards, and unless it works completely different in South Africa, which is entirely possible because it is darkest Africa, but a board has anything between 5 to 15 members, and the board as a collective. Yes, the board has a collective responsibility, but each member of the board has a speciality task. All right,
Of course.
And the way I understand it also, that the treasurer has the specific task of dealing with financial matters. Yes, of course, that doesn't give him sole power. And then, was there a chairperson? Surely there must have been somebody who...
Yeah, the chair of the board meetings is the president, who was Gail Miller. And you're right that the responsibilities are split up. So John Richards was the affiliate director for a time. Gail Miller was president. There are different people who are secretary. I was secretary, and I had some specific responsibilities. But just very quickly to finish, Tercia, just because I was secretary doesn't mean I don't have responsibilities with regard to how the money is spent. I mean,
I'm not saying.
So for John to come on here and say, well, I had this role of affiliate director and I didn't know about that other thing, that's an absurd, puerile, sophomoric nonsense.
No, John is not saying that, and I'm not saying that. But the fact of the matter is, I cannot see how there's any way that John, or even the treasurer, could go and say, I am now going to publish the accounts. That is a function
hang on.
of...
No, that's not what I'm saying, Tercia. But what I'm saying is, if I was on the board and the board was required under the bylaws to publish financial accounts to the members and wasn't doing it, I would do something about that. I would say this board cannot do any other business until we adhere to our responsibilities to publish the financial accounts to the members.
It's fine for you to say that.
No, it's not just that I say it here and now. I did it.
No.
And it's not just me that did it. Everyone else did it. From 2016 and 10 years before that, everyone else did it. The only people who didn't do it was John Richards and his 4 corrupt friends, because he's a fraud and a charlatan and a liar.
You are really, John, I have to, the person that should be having this conversation, that you should have this conversation, should not be had in this way about these matters with one member of the board.
Well, there's only one here, Tercia. If you want to go and get the others, I'll talk to them too.
You're attacking this person. You cannot.
No, I'm not just attacking this person. I've already explained to you, Tercia, that I've had this conversation with Bill Flail, with Howard Berman, and with others. The person among this kind of corrupt cabal of 5 people, the person that I've spoken to least is John Richards. And the person who whines like a baby most is John Richards.
So John Hamill, I just want to give you a little bit of personal history, and I need to finish up because I have to go and pick up my son. So we've been going for an hour and a half. So I was...
And John still hasn't answered the question that I asked him. Sorry, go ahead, Tercia.
Frankly, I think it's a completely irrelevant question. As an outsider, as somebody who's concerned with atheist matters and atheist activism, I really think that...
It's irrelevant that the board didn't publish the financial accounts to the members for several years?
The organization seems to me to be doing really well. So if that board did so much harm and so much damage, then either
the organization is not doing really well. The organization has been destroyed. All democratic legitimacy in the organization has been destroyed. Many of the most talented affiliates have been effectively expelled.
My measurement of whether an organization does well is the evidence that I can see that they really make a difference in people's lives.
Well, no, hang on, Tercia. Hang on, Tercia. I have to say, Tercia, that is an appalling thing to say, and I'll explain to you why. If I came round to your house, Tercia, and stole your car, Tercia, and then I said, well, actually, That car's doing really well since I took it. Look how wonderful the car is.
False.
This
I'm
is
sorry,
ridiculous.
that
It's
is
not a false analogy. It's not a false analogy. These people performed a coup. They
No.
they appropriated an organization that wasn't theirs. They had no mandate to take over control of it. They got no votes from anyone. They took over control of it without any mandate whatsoever, and then they give themselves top marks. It doesn't matter how many. I mean, personally, I think the organization is a total disaster, but it actually doesn't matter. It's not up to them to decide what's good and what's not. The number of votes, Tercia, that have been given to Howard Berman, Bill Flavelle, and John Richards combined, all three combined, is precisely zero. They had no mandate to take over that organization from anyone. They're utterly fraudulent and illegitimate.
I don't care. I care about the fact that the organization is building schools, teaching children.
36 members who built the organization, Tercia.
Tough shit. I don't care. I care about.
Well, I think your attitude is utterly appalling.
I will accept the insults coming my way, which I expect. But I will tell you that my position, I'm actually quite fond of the idea of a benign dictator, because I live in a democracy where the ANC is the most democratic party in the world, and it's having very detrimental effects. So just to be upset about some undemocratic behavior, to me, I'm more concerned about the outcome and the effect than how democratic something was. And that's just me. But maybe that's because I live under load shedding, and maybe I see people dying in hospitals and people dying of hunger because of democracy, because you can't eat democracy. And when there's a crisis, you sometimes need to take steps. And that's just me. So, and that
there
has
we
nothing
have it.
to do with riches. That's my opinion.
Down with democracies, up with dictators.
John, can I say goodbye? Because I have to pick up my son.
Please do, Tercia.
Thank you for your help, Tercia. Thank you. And I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. Global Atheist News Review. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So, John, do you realize how you're coming over? You're coming over as a sort of an attack dog who won't let go of things that are history. And you've made a number of false accusations, and you are not answering the questions that are addressed to you. I mean, look at this one from Martin Boers. Hamill, you haven't finished your answer to the question, what should be done? That's a very good question. Surely that question is referring to what should be done to benefit victims of religious bigotry, shouldn't it? And you haven't answered my question that I gave you earlier, which was...
Which one? I'll answer it now.
Okay. What have you, John Hamill, done for atheism in the past 12 months? Because I showed you what AAI has done in the past 12 months. Do you want me to show you that again?
No, thanks. So most of my activism since I left Atheist Ireland has been in...
Well, we're talking about the last 12 months. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's when I left Atheist Ireland.
Sure.
Okay.
Go on.
So, yeah, most of my activism since I left Atheist Ireland has been focused here in Ireland, largely on the education system, but also relating to equality laws, as they have been interpreted by some of our politicians. We have a number of politicians in Ireland who have been giving preferential treatment to the religious and excluding minorities such as religious minorities and atheists. And we also have a lot of similar discrimination in the education system. So I've been taking some legal cases at my own time and expense to try and challenge those. What have you done, John?
Sterling work.
What have you done, John?
Well, I'm as I didn't want to put this out because I'm not representing anybody tonight other than me, but I'm the president of Atheism UK, and I do quite a lot of work in that role. And I
Such
also
as?
well, our current campaigns, we have got a similar one to you in addressing unfair application of the regulations for children of Catholic primary schools who were sent there because it was the nearest school, but who are now finding that they can't transfer to a secular and it's called community ethos in this country, secondary school, because once the Catholic school board has got their hooks into these pupils, they carry out nefarious means of preventing them from transferring to a non-Catholic secondary. So that's outrageous. And we've got another initiative which is to do with making the regulations for landlords, which are quite strict about permitting people to protest and campaign on their premises, apply to within the vicinity of religious buildings. So that's another one. And there's the third one that, oh yes, we're trying to get every statement that is made by a religious person to be fact checked. You know, we have an organization here called fullfact.org, and it doesn't really touch many of the claims that are made. For example, in his Easter address, the Archbishop of Canterbury said that he knows that the government's policy to deport people to Rwanda is against his God's intentions. Now, I would like to know how he knows what his God intends. So we need to fact check that sort of claim.
Okay, and may I ask, John, if you agree with what Tercia said about preferring benign dictatorship to democracy, and that the ANC is a good example of democracy gone bad? I have to say, Tercia's remarks were utterly appalling in my mind, John. I just wanted to know if you would like to associate yourself with her remarks when she said she doesn't care about democracy being destroyed in AI because she prefers dictatorship.
I'm very much a Democrat, John, like I suspect you are.
No, you're not, John. You claim to be a Democrat, but you never received a single vote from anyone in AI. Can you just confirm that, John? How many members of AI ever voted for you for anything? The answer to that is an integer.
I'm not going to argue with that. I was co-opted, and under extreme circumstances,
there were no extreme circumstances.
Well, so this again, you're making
even if there was, John, even if there was extreme circumstances, the extreme circumstances do not prevent you from seeking election at the next opportunity, which you didn't do.
It was impossible to
but
communicate.
Even when you had an AGM in 2018, you still weren't elected at the AGM in 2018.
No, because my term of office hadn't terminated then. But
no, it had. It terminated at the end of 2017, and you didn't seek election at the end of 2017, and then there was an AGM in 2018, and you didn't seek election in 2018 either. So you continued from 2017 through to 2020, pretending to be a director on the board of AAI, and the sum total of votes that you received throughout those years was precisely zero. You're not a Democrat, John. You're a fraud. You're a coward, a fraud, a charlatan, and an imposter, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
You missed out dishonest again. Come on.
You're a dishonest charlatan. I mean, if you disagree, tell me. I mean, the answer is an integer, John. I can tell you how many people voted for me. It's in the minutes. Throughout those years, John, 2017 to 2020, what is the sum total of votes that you received from members of AI?
Zero. I'm not denying that.
Zero. Do not tell me you're a Democrat then. You were pretending to be a board member.
I'm going to have to muting you again, John, because once you get into a tirade, there's no gaps. We don't have an opportunity to say anything. You're just voluble. It's as if you're winding a gramophone record, out it spews. And so you've done some good things for atheism in the past 12 months. Well done. So have I. I've been not only president of the Atheism UK organization, but I've run my Global Atheist News every week. And actually, we're looking for an Irish reporter. And I'm interested to hear what's going on in Ireland about, religious harm being perpetrated over your part of the world. And I'm going to invite you to be the correspondent from Ireland on my Global Atheist News, if you wish, John. But the other thing that I wanted to say is that we inherited from the previous board an organization which had maybe 4 of the previous board still on it. I was co-opted. Bill started first. He got together with Gail and started the renovation of a derelict organization. And then I was co-opted. Howard came along a bit later, and gradually we built up a board. And you made a false accusation about, you quoted your last AGM, and you said something about, I don't know, what was it, 21 members in 2016. Well, in 2022, listen to this, 65 affiliates are on the list. That's fully affiliated, properly affiliated. And the AAI just held this 2022 AGM. And do you know how many of them attended? I was one of them as president of AUK. And it was 21 individual atheist organizations attended the AGM, and votes were counted. I was there while that happened. So let's go back to what can be done to improve this organization. Would you like to suggest, and I'm not talking about history now, I'm talking about going forward. We've already gone from the 36 original members through the 21 when it dropped down to 6, and we've rescued it, and now there's 65, 21 of whom attend the AGM and vote. I want it to go up. Do you?
Is your speech over yet?
Nice to be able to make one, isn't it? Because you don't let me.
Firstly, John, you quoted a number of affiliates there. You quoted them incorrectly because a large number of the affiliates on the website have disassociated themselves from AAI because of the corruption at AAI, and AAI refused.
That's thanks to you, John. You can pat yourself on the back. You have done a great job of disrespecting a worthy organization. And the people who are harmed by this are not the board members. The board members have got nothing to lose. They don't get anything in return for their voluntary efforts. So the people who are being harmed here are victims of religious bigotry. And you seem to want to proceed with that mission. And I don't understand it. It's not human. It's not humane. It's not humanitarian. Why? What are you benefiting from this vicious, vengeful act of destruction to a worthy organization? It boggles my mind. What is the reasoning behind your vindictiveness? Why do you want to harm people who are being sentenced and executed for blasphemy around the world? Tell me that.
Do you want me to answer, or are we going to have this thing again where I say 3 words and then you mute me and have a big speech? Because, I mean, if that's what you're going to do, I don't think you want to know the answer, John. I mean, I was sitting around minding my own business when I received a message from you inviting me on here. I never asked to come on your podcast. Bring me on the podcast.
Okay, I can tell you why I invited you. It's because you insulted me and Atheism UK, and you called it a clown car. I mean, what is the point of all these playground insults? Why do you want to damage worthy organizations? Tell me that. And don't go into some other thing. Tell me the answer. Why do you want to harm victims of religious bigotry and heinous acts?
Honestly, John, this is no way to have a conversation, son, but I'll answer your question directly, like I've answered all the other ones.
I'm
So
listening.
I've no interest in harming atheists in trouble. In fact, I wrote an article recently about exactly the campaigns that you're just describing, and in that article, I described which ones I supported personally. So many of the cases that you put up in your video, I mean, the AAI's description of what they did in those cases is not honest or forthright. But I'm not trying to destroy any of that work. I supported that work with my
Good.
own money. Now,
Good.
the other thing is,
So let
the
up
first
then.
thing. Sorry, John. I mean, look, son. If you're just going to ask a question and then mute me and shout over me, I mean, I'll answer your question if you want.
I'm praising you,
But
John. I'm praising you.
but
I'm saying it's
the first
good.
thing that Michael Sherlock did after he left AAI was to do exactly the kind of campaign that you described. He did another GoFundMe for a very similar case. And I supported financially Michael's GoFundMe too. So I mean, anyone who's in AAI who wants to do that kind of work, they don't have to be an AAI to do it. I
No,
mean, nobody's stopping them doing that work either
no,
inside or outside AAI.
no.
And
Mm.
now that I've answered your question directly, John, may I ask that you please answer one of mine? Um, so let me assume, for the sake of argument, that there was some crisis in 2017. I mean, I've sent Tercia, the dictatorship fan, lots of documents that describe why that's not true. But let me accept, for the sake of argument, that there was some crisis in 2017. So you didn't seek a mandate at the end of 2017 as you were required to do. You didn't resign at the end of 2017 as you were required to do. And then there was an AGM in 2018, which you attended. At that meeting, there was a vote for Gail Miller to be the president. So it was certainly possible to have people submit themselves for election. You didn't submit yourself for election in 2017 or 2018 or 2019. And so my question is, why not? Even if there was a crisis in 2017, there's nothing stopping you submitting yourself for election at the AGM in 2018, and you didn't. You never received a single vote from a single affiliate member of AAI in your life, and yet you spent years as a charlatan fraud, pretending to be a director, acting with a role on the AAI board when you had absolutely no mandate for that role. And that's just explicitly dishonest, to pretend you have a mandate when you don't. So you don't like me using the word charlatan and dishonest, John, but I'm describing exactly why you were dishonest and exactly why you were a fraud, because you pretended to be a director on a board when actually you never sought a mandate, you never acquired a mandate, and you were a fraud. So why did you not submit yourself for election at the 2018 AGM?
Because I was co-opted in September 2017 and my term of office hadn't finished.
No, that's not true. So there's nothing that says when you're co-opted that you have a year to be on the board until you need to be elected again. In fact, the bylaws say the opposite. They say you have less than a year. The bylaws say when you're co-opted, you must be elected at the next AGM. So there's no part of the bylaws that says once you're co-opted at the end of 2017 that you have to wait until the end of 2018 before you get elected. You have to get elected at the very next AGM. But even if that was true, you didn't get elected in 2019 either. So again, why did you not submit yourself for election in 2018 and 2019?
Well, I don't know about 2019, but I know that 2018, wasn't that the year that there was no AGM because we didn't have access to communicate with the...
No, there was an AGM. There was an AGM. You attended it. Only one affiliate attended, which is Andrew Rawlings. Gail Miller was elected at that AGM. You were not.
Well,
Why not?
Well, you see, that's 4 years ago, so my memory is imperfect, and I apologize for that. But
well, this is what I said to Tercia earlier, and she poo-pooed me. The answer to all of your corruption is to say, yeah, sorry.
You're raking stuff up with no decent motive. Anybody who wishes to help the victims of religious harm would be supporting this organization. Okay, there were some mistakes made when it was being rescued.
I can do both.
There were some mistakes made when it was being rescued. I'll accept that, But the point is that now it's thriving, except that you're doing your best to kill it. And the reason that some of the affiliates have left since the peak of 65 at the AGM this year, where 21 of them attended, is because of you, John. You, with your historic grievance against an organization that was in dire need of rescue, are killing it.
So, firstly, Shirley and the rest of the Latin American affiliates, I'd never met Shirley until after, I'd never spoken to her until after she issued that statement. The idea that Shirley and the rest of the Latin America affiliates resigned because of me, because of something I said, I mean, that idea removes all agency from them. They're perfectly capable of making up their own mind, and they did make up their own mind. And also, the false dichotomy that you present is just appalling, John. I mean, you're saying, why I have bad motives in asking about your democratic mandate because I haven't helped atheists in trouble. It's possible to do both, John. In fact, just 5 minutes ago, I told you I personally contributed cash to a lot of those cases that you have put on the screen earlier. I wrote an article describing which ones. I put the receipts up from all of the donations that I made years ago. So it's possible to do both. It's possible to both support those cases and also to require that the people who think and represent themselves as a democratic board actually do have a democratic mandate. It's possible for me to both support those cases and also at the same time say someone who presents themselves as a director on the board who in fact has no mandate whatsoever is a dishonest charlatan who should be thoroughly ashamed of themselves. And the fact that some GoFundMe exists somewhere does not excuse you for your anti-democratic and dishonest behaviour. And the idea that you should answer that question by saying, well, I didn't get elected in 2018 because AAI did a fund me in 2020. I mean, it's the most sophomoric, puerile nonsense, John. It really is. You really do have a responsibility and an onus to explain yourself, son. You really need to sit down and explain, this is what I did. This is why I did not seek a mandate in 2018 and 2019. This is why I presented myself as a director on an international atheist board when I had no mandate to do so. You really need to sit down and explain that like an adult with your big boy pants on, and waving your arms and talking about GoFundMes is not an explanation.
Are you finished? Big boy pants. You love to dig, don't you, eh? So, in fact, I've been answering some of Michael Boer's comments here. The democratic control was returned to the affiliates, because we actually had a database and several affiliates on it at the time, so we could do that. And it was returned several years ago, and that's why we could start having AGMs. In fact, now it's more democratic than it ever was
under
under
AGM in
your
2018.
in fact, it's more democratic now than it ever was in your day,
Nonsense.
John, because you wanted, I believe, your board wanted to introduce regional directors, and it hadn't happened, but it has now. We do have regional directors now.
But
So
you also have a bylaw that says the board can ignore motions passed by the members.
not anymore. No, that's
No,
never
that's
been.
there. It's there on the
That's
website. Go and look. It's there right now. Go and look. It's on the website at the minute.
Show me the link. It must be out of date. Needs updating.
It's not because Bill Flavelle has apologised for it. He told, you can ask Martin Bores there, because Bill Flavelle told Martin Bores he regrets not changing it in the recent.
Sure. So, fine. Okay. So
don't tell me the current board is more democratic than it was before. That's nonsense, John. The current board introduced a bylaw allowing them to ignore the members.
The makeup of the organization is improved now because it has regional directors, which I believe you floated back in your day, but which never got achieved until quite recently. Because, of course, it's when you've got a moribund organization, it's really going to get anything done.
John, you're embarrassing yourself. I can explain the issue with the regional directors if you're interested. I mean, that suggestion came from Annie Laurie Gaylor and Dan Barker. That suggestion was put in the document written by Annie Laurie Gaylor, Dan Barker, and Michael Nugent. Those three people sought and put in writing that they wanted that proposal put in front of the 2018 AGM that you attended, but you did not. You and your four friends did not allow Atheist Ireland or FFRF to attend that meeting. You deliberately excluded them. And you did not put that in front of the members. Instead, what you put in front of the members was a fait accompli that said, we have to introduce these new bylaws that take away the right of the members to elect directors, take away the responsibility for the board to make financial reports, take away the right of the members to pass motions that were binding on the board. You and your four friends brought those proposals to the AGM instead of Dan Barker and Annie Laurie Gaylor's proposals. And then 4 or 5 years later, when you realise your status at the UN is under threat, all of a sudden you have to backtrack and try and backfill the bylaws with all the other people's democratic ideas that you torpedoed years ago. And now you want a pat on the back for it. I mean, again, you need to explain your actions, son. You need to explain why did you not seek an election in 2018 and 2019? Why did you pretend to be a director on AAI for years without a mandate? Why did you present yourself as acting on behalf of an international organization for which you had absolutely no mandate? I've asked you several times and I haven't heard an answer. All you keep saying was there was a crisis in 2017. Well, okay, even if there was an AGM in 2018. You attended the AGM in 2018. Gail Miller attended the AGM in 2018. She was elected. You weren't. There was an AGM. There was meetings later than that as well. Again, you did not get elected. You have never got a single vote from anyone, and yet you dishonestly presented yourself as acting on behalf of an organization for which you had absolutely no mandate to act on behalf of. You should be thoroughly ashamed of yourself. And the first thing you need to do is put your big boy pants on like a grown-up and explain yourself. Explain yourself, son. Write down the reasons. Explain yourself.
How about slopey shoulders? I haven't heard you say that one lately.
Slopey shoulders, yeah, that's an Irish expression, John, that refers to someone who doesn't have the stature to shoulder their own responsibility. Like, for example, someone on a board where that board has very specific responsibilities in the bylaws, And the only answer that they can provide when they don't live up to their responsibilities is, well, somebody else on the board was supposed to do that thing. I mean, it's absolutely absurd nonsense. It really is. And anyone who thinks that's how the collective responsibility on the board of directors functions has no business near any board.
So what do you want to do, John? What's your ambition here? Do you want to kill AAI? Is that it?
I think it should be returned to the democratic control of the members.
It is. It's already in the democratic control.
So, firstly, I'll explain to you why it's not.
Of the members and the affiliates. It's been in the democratic control.
I'll explain to you why it's not.
It's been in the democratic control of the members and the affiliates for more than 3 years.
It's not.
Now.
I'll explain to you why it's not. First, I mean, isn't that absolutely extraordinary? Boasting about Atheist Alliance International having been in control of the affiliates for 3 years. It was in the control of the affiliates for well over a decade before you destroyed the democratic accountability, you and your corrupt mates. And only 3 years ago, even by your account, your best boast is that only 3 years ago, the democratic accountability was restored. That's appalling. It's actually not even true.
Well,
so here's why it's not true.
It may very well not be true because I'm speaking from memory, which is not reliable. But the point is that back when you and the other rats left the sinking ship, there was no AAI. There was only, at that time, 6 current affiliates. And to be a voting affiliate, you have to be in good standing, which means paid up. And I don't know whether your organization, Atheist Ireland, was in that situation. I wasn't doing that part of the work at the time, so I took the advice of those who were responsible for that area of operation.
So, John, you're someone who was the affiliate director of an international organization who is just repeatedly.
As I said, you're going back over items which have already been corrected. I was briefly the affiliates director. At that time, we had no access to the database, and the number of affiliates who were current was 6, and they weren't responding to any attempts to email them. I couldn't email them because I couldn't access the database. So don't keep revisiting stuff that we've cleared up previously.
So continually muting your guest, John, does not reflect well on you, but let me explain.
The reason I have to do this is because you have a flow, an uninterrupted flow, in which you make a number of false statements that I don't get to address.
So let me explain where you've gone wrong, John. You just mentioned that there were only 6 paid up affiliates and you have to be in good standing in order to vote at an AGM. So that's just not true. It doesn't say that in the bylaws, and actually it's not true for a very good reason. So a large number of the affiliates over many years were from parts of the world, firstly, that were in the developing world, where a lot of people did have very much money to spend on membership subscriptions for international organizations. And secondly, a lot of those atheist affiliates were in countries where it was quite dangerous to be an atheist. So asking those organizations to go and create a bank account and send us money was something that we just didn't do. So the idea that you had to be paid up and therefore in good standing to vote is just not true, John. There were many, many organizations every single year that voted without having paid a cent, and they were very welcome to do so. They were perfectly entitled to do so. That was entirely within the bylaws. So by way of you saying there were only 6 paid up members, therefore the only 6 in good standing and only 6 entitled to vote. That's just, I mean, it's just not true. They were all in good standing. They were all entitled to vote. If there were only 6 paid up, there's only one conclusion from that, which is someone in the organization had to set a fee and send them an invoice. So that was a problem for the board. That wasn't a problem for the affiliates. Do you want to answer Michael Nugent's question now?
No, I want to respond to what you've just said, because it isn't just a case of being paid up. And of course we understood, and I'm no longer part of this now, so I don't really know why I'm defending it. We understood that there were organizations in poor parts of the world who couldn't pay. The requirement was not to be lapsed. It was to be current. It was to have renewed, albeit at no cost, membership or affiliation. Now you can answer Michael Nugent.
Okay, well, just to say, would you mention there about being lapsed and current? I mean, that's just totally made up, John. None of that's in the bylaws. The word lapsed does not appear in the bylaws. The word current does not appear in the bylaws. The mechanism through which a membership will be revoked through not paying is very clear in the bylaws. What has to happen is the board sets a fee for a particular affiliate, depending on their means. The board, having voted on that fee, sends an invoice. Only if the invoice goes unpaid, then you can start talking about people being lapsed. But because the board did not send out any invoices, there were no lapsed memberships. So this idea that you have of there were only 6 who weren't lapsed or only 6 that were current, I mean, it's just not true. But you asked me to address Michael Nugent's question. Michael's asking about the provision in the current bylaws, which says that the board can ignore a motion passed by the members. That provision's still there. You can look it up on the AI website. It's on the AI website now. Michael's asking, did you not know about that?
I didn't. No, and listen, I haven't been in AA.
What do you think about that, John? What do you think about that?
I'd have to provision? I'd have to look at the bylaws to see.
Okay, you can look at it now. It says if the members.
Send me the link.
It's atheistalliance.org, and at the top of the website, it will provide. I'm sure one of the nice people in the comments there will send you a link. If you go to atheistalliance.org and go into the About Us part, it'll have a link to the bylaws.
Well, at the moment, it's not opening. I'll try again.
You mean the website's broken, John? Goodness, extreme measures. We will have to take extreme measures. Someone will have to take over the organization. If the website's broken, I mean, by your standard, extreme measures are now required, eh?
I don't know whether the website's broken. It may be my connection. You're making assumptions unjustifiably.
If the website was broken, would that mean extreme measures are required?
No, but
Why not?
If the website was directing people to porn sites, it might.
Really? If the website had some broken links that went to adult content, that means someone who's not elected can take over the organization. Really?
It means that the organization is in need of rescuing, definitely.
Yeah, but by the members, not by some self-appointed person. Okay, well, in the private chat, I've just sent you a link to the bylaws on the current Atheist Alliance website, and you're looking for bylaw number 59, and you're looking for the last sentence of bylaw 59. I shall read it out to you. It says, in relation to motions passed by the members, the board shall take motions so passed into consideration, but may use its discretion as to whether and how to act upon them. So the members can pass a motion by unanimous vote. You can have every single member vote for a motion, and the board can decide whether or not they will implement that. In fact, the board can decide to do the precise polar opposite from what the members have voted on, And this is the organization that you're admonishing me is more democratic than the one I was involved with. What do you think of the last sentence of Bylaw 59, John?
Well, as you can see, that that bylaw was ratified in this year. So I wasn't part of AAI and haven't been part of AAI for the majority of 2021 and the whole of 2022.
But what do you think about that sentence?
Well,
what do you think about? I mean,
it depends. Let me just get it out so that I can look at it and look at you, John. It depends on the definition of members, because I really don't know. Because when I was part of AAI, a member was an individual and an affiliate was an organization. So I don't know what member means.
Something that. No, sorry, John. That's something that your group introduced. There were affiliate members and associate members, and in fact, under California law, they were required to be called members. The affiliates were required to be called members under California law. Your group in 2018 took that out, not realizing it was there for a good legal reason, and then they had to put it back in. So a member is, if you go up to the top, there's a definition of these terms. The member in this context is an affiliate, and they have to be called members under California law. So what the last sentence of Bylaw 59 here is saying is that if all of the affiliates vote unanimously to pass a particular motion, the board has discretion as to whether to implement it or not implement it, or implement the precise opposite policy. And my question to you is, what do you think of that as a democratic organization?
Well, as I said, I'm no longer part of this organization. I didn't take part in drawing up Article 59. So
I accept that. I totally accept that you didn't write this, John. I didn't ask whether you wrote it or not. I'm asking, what do you think of it?
It doesn't seem very democratic to me, but I would need to know the motivation behind it.
Okay,
it may be. I'd just be guessing.
Could I make a suggestion? Can I make a suggestion, John? If you haven't been involved and you don't know how the bylaws came to be written, and you're not sure how to interpret the bylaws, and you're entirely detached from the organization now, perhaps you shouldn't be admonishing and chastising your guests to extol the virtues of this organization when I clearly know much more about it than you. I know what the current bylaws say. I know why they say what they currently say. I was able to point you to it. You clearly don't know anything about the current bylaws, as you've admitted yourself. So perhaps it's not really appropriate for you be wagging your finger at me and insisting that I have to support this organization. You don't know anything about the organization.
No, I'm not requesting you to support. You can support who you like, John. You don't have to do what I say. This is a democratic world. But
Can you answer Michael's latest question, John? He's asked you another question there.
I haven't seen it. Hang on. Well, there may be. I mean, how do I know what I've been misinformed about? I mean, that's a ridiculous question. If I knew I'd been misinformed, I wouldn't be misinformed.
It's not ridiculous, John. It's not ridiculous. I'll explain to you why it's not ridiculous. I'll give you one example. So you've repeatedly said that the organization was a crisis when you took over, and when I tried to explain to you that that's not true, you told me on Twitter that you can only go on what you're told, and that's what you were told. And what I explained to you on Twitter was that that's not true. You don't have to only go on what you're told. There's lots of sources of information. I sent you an audio recording of the 2016 AGM at the end of that year. I sent you the slides that were presented at that AGM. I sent you the agenda of the 2017, January 2017 board meeting. I showed you that the updates to the SALSA system were already in track, that the rebuilding the website was already in track. I showed you the letter from Carlos Diaz when he objected to this idea that there was some kind of crisis. So you don't have to just go on what you're told. And it's not ridiculous for Michael to suggest that you may have been misinformed. And it's perfectly easy to find other sources of reliable information, like the actual contemporaneous documents at the time, which demonstrate comprehensively that there was no crisis. That your contention that you were responding to some kind of crisis, I mean, that's just an adjective. That's backed up by nothing. I mean, you haven't published any documents that describe any crisis. And in fact, all of the documents from the time describe precisely the opposite. They describe an organization in rude good health. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's perfectly possible, as you've just admitted, that when it was represented to you that there's some kind of crisis that you have to respond to, that you were just misinformed.
Well, I would listen. You have admitted that, and you explained why, which news to me of this accusation of murder, false accusation of murder, mistaken identity thing. You've admitted that there was, what did you call it? Because you didn't like the word exodus, a dropout of.
Just to protect the innocent, John, by the way. So there wasn't a mistaken identity. The person who was involved with AAI was correctly identified. It was the same person on the front page of the newspaper. It's just that as the investigation around the dead body progressed, even though they were associated with the events, that person claimed they weren't guilty of any crime, and even though I believe they were questioned by the police as part of their investigation, they weren't charged with any crime. And the Canadian police reported, because this person, it wasn't mistaken identity, that the person was correctly identified, but they weren't charged with a crime. And to my mind, then this person is totally innocent, and that's why I don't want to use their name in connection with the allegation.
Yeah. So in some way, the allegations were false, whether it was a mistaken identity or simply he wasn't responsible for the alleged crime. So, but this is all news to me because I didn't arrive until September 2017. But nevertheless, you have told me in this conversation that there was a mass. No, you're not going to allow me to use the word exodus, are you? There was
Well, it's just not true, John. It's just not true.
Okay. It's a biblical word. It doesn't have a very precise meaning.
Honestly, John, listen, as a friend, man, listen. You want to use the word exodus, and you want to create this idea that there was some kind of crisis. But in the very next sentence, you will say, but I wasn't there and I don't know anything about it, and I wasn't brought on until September, so I don't know what happened before that. I'm saying to you is there's obviously an awful lot that you don't know, which is fine. There's an awful lot that I don't know. But please have the humility to understand that when you don't know something about what happened in 2017, you cannot immediately jump to the conclusion that there was some kind of crisis that you had to save the organization from. Just like when you don't know what the current bylaws say and why, you shouldn't jump to the conclusion that the current organization is more democratic now than it was before, because the things that you're saying just aren't true. I happen to have knowledge of the things that you're saying. I know they're not true. I've provided documentary evidence that they're not true.
You're swamping me again. Can I come back before you completely bury me with your flow? Now, it's not that I am claiming that there was an exodus. It's that you have told me that shortly after you left, a number of other people left, and I think we've identified it might have been down to about 4 of the board that was in existence when you were the secretary. So however you want to describe it, exodus, dropping out, or whatever.
I would describe it as business as usual. That's entirely. It has been entirely normal throughout the
It's not,
history of
no,
AAI for
no,
the
it's
for the
not,
number of
no,
directors on the board
no,
to go up and
no,
down.
no, it's not. Yeah, to go up
John,
and down. But,
let me give you an absolute fact. It is
hang on.
entirely normal for the number of directors on the board on AAI to go up significantly and down significantly. That happened very often on very many occasions throughout the history of AAI. That is easily manageable as a business as usual issue. It's manageable by co-opting more directors, which is what happened. You were one of them. There's absolutely nothing out of the ordinary there. That's entirely how things are.
Except the number. Because in my experience, when I was part of AAI, we lost 1 or 2 board members a year. We gained 1 or 2 board members a year. It wasn't a depletion down to 4.
That's just not true, John. Those kind of numbers went up and down all the time. So again, you're saying accept the numbers. You're saying the numbers was unusual, and I'm trying to tell you, if someone has explained to you that this was unusual or some kind of crisis, that's just wrong. Those numbers fluctuated in those ways many times. That happened very often. It's not any kind of crisis. It's entirely normal. And I mean, what's the problem if the number of directors goes down to 4 and they can go back up? So what?
Well, that isn't the only element of the crisis, is it? As I listed several. There was expenditure exceeding income. There was a website which sent people to pornography sites. There was an unusable, well, certainly a very expensive and difficult to use database system. There was exorbitant bank charges. This wasn't just a case of everybody had left. This was a case of...
John, you're saying things that are not true, and I understand you have either been misinformed or it's just it's not. Maybe you're not aware of the details, but you're saying things like expenditure exceeded income. Maybe you haven't read them, but I sent you the slides from the 2016 AGM. It's just not true that expenditure was exceeding income. Income was $25,000 in 2016, and the idea that the organization was spending $10,000 a year, that was some kind of crisis, is just absurd. It is true that we thought that the SALSA system was more expensive and that we should. I mean, personally, I thought we should just use an Excel spreadsheet, but. The fact that the SALSA was a bit expensive, that is not a crisis, John.
Okay. So you were perfect, I understand. But the thing is that's all happened some years ago. And anybody who's really concerned for the welfare of atheists in countries where they're being victimized would be trying to look forward. So how would you recommend AAI could be improved? And don't say by admitting all that historic guilt, because that's not looking forward.
Well, I think in terms of looking forward, there is a well-practiced methodology there. I mean, your previous host should be familiar with the term truth and reconciliation. You can't have reconciliation without truth. So I think it would be good for the board to return the organization to the democratic control of the valid members. But I mean, it's not. I mean, no, it hasn't. And I've explained to you why the organization isn't under the democratic control of the members, and also the membership that you keep listing is bogus. So, for example, the FreeThought Profit podcast was invited to become a member of AAI. I mean, it's utterly absurd. The only people who have been defending AAI through the recent corruption allegations are organizations that are net recipients of AAI funds. So this idea that there's 60 affiliates out there who are all big supporters of AAI is just a fiction, John. It's not true.
21 of them turned up to the AGM in
So
May.
you've asked me about going forward. What I would say is we should have truth and reconciliation, and then a return to the democratic control of the valid members. And I would say anyone who wants to avoid truth and reconciliation is engaged in a cover-up. When there is wrongdoing, and you don't want to talk about the wrongdoing and insist only looking in the future and not dealing with the wrongdoing that has happened, there's a name for that, John. That's called a cover-up.
There's also a name. Oh, hang on. Let me get this up first. Right. There's also a name for stuff like this, which you did only last week. You held a pretend general meeting, and you think it's funny, don't you? Because
I thought it was hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that what you're doing, you're amusing yourself, and you don't. You think I'm having a lot of fun at taking this organization down, and it doesn't really matter that the people who are going to be hurt will be those people on the. I think it was 22 slides that we watched of what Atheist Alliance International did last.
Why would they be hurt by returning democratic legitimacy to AAI?
No. That's not what's going on. What's going on is you are continually, for some unknown reason, being vindictive and vengeful and another V word that I can't think of right now, and hurting.
Vociferous.
That's it, thank you. And hurting the very organization that's saving these victims. Now, why are you doing that? Is it for your pleasure?
Well, again, John, I think you're presenting me with a false dichotomy, as if I have to pick one, as if I have to pick either democratic legitimacy for AAI or else helping atheists in trouble. And as I say, that's a false choice. It's perfectly possible to do both. In fact, I have been doing both. I have been financially supporting those campaigns and at the same time seeking democratic legitimacy in AAI. So the idea that anyone campaigning for democratic legitimacy in AAI necessarily wants to hurt atheists in trouble, that's an absurd suggestion, John.
No, it's not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that this is an organization which has a bit more clout than John Hamill on his own, and therefore it's probably a good idea to help it.
I disagree, John. When you were presenting yourself on the board of as being on the board of AAI, you had exactly the same mandate as I did. Zero. I mean, I don't have a mandate to present myself as a director on the board of an international organization, but neither did you. You just did it anyway. So it's not the case that AAI has more clout than me. The people involved in AAI at the minute are a bunch of frauds, imposters, and charlatans.
No. They're well-intentioned people who are doing good work in the name of atheism.
They're practiced liars who are frauds and charlatans. Who have published many lies on their website, which are still on their website today.
John, I've had enough of this. You just don't stop, do you? Just
would you like me to show you some of the lies? Would you like me to show you some of them?
This is turning into a child's playground haranguing, bullying event.
It's not haranguing. I'd like to point you to a document.
The victims are being ignored. So it's my bedtime, John.
I'm not ignoring them. I'm